Welcome to the Digital Dreamer Off the Ground podcast. It is a fantasy winner Tuesday and a loser Tuesday. So kind of a split in both leagues. So pretty much, I'm just gonna kind of get right into it. Obviously last night, the Chiefs, beat the Raiders in thriller, 30-29. Travis Kelce had 4 touchdowns, but in this league right here, Josh Jacobs came up huge, 132 yards and a touchdown. Derek Carr 250 yards, kind of Carr numbers around. Sorry, Derek Carr had Jimmy Garoppolo numbers with around 18 of 30, 18 or 19 of 30, and 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. Patrick Mahomes had 4 touchdowns, which is why I lost in this league. So, well, that's one of the reasons why I lost in this league. But, anyways, I basically go to 3-2, just like the Niners, right? Just like the Niners, baby. So, ultimately, I just want to kind of get into it. This league, obviously, sorry, this one, my ESPN Plus league, Jalen Hurts obviously was kind of pedestrian to this week. I really relied on Josh Jacobs, but consistently across the board, I think I had a lot of good performers, a lot of good value. Stephon Diggs, obviously 28 points, and I think for the running backs, if I'm not mistaken, Travis Etienne Jr., not Travis Etienne Jr., I apologize. I forgot who. Let me actually pull it up. 1 second, team. I'm gonna pull up the fantasy scores, but actually, while I'm doing that, let's go ahead and talk about last night's game. Obviously the Chiefs, they beat the Raiders. Travis Kelce on his 33rd birthday basically had threw 4 touchdowns. All four from Patrick Mahomes. They were the Raiders obviously, were in the game. They're leading 17-0. The Chiefs basically, got a field goal and the Raiders got a field goal before half, 20-10. Then, coming in the third quarter, Derek Carr was, basically, he was pretty much just, he was pretty solid. I want to say, he made some really good passes and, Devontae Adams also, he got a touchdown late in the fourth, Devontae Adams. The Raiders made a questionable decision, to go for it too, instead of again taking the points. I personally thought that, they really shouldn't have done that because, if they would have just, settled for the field goal, then they would have they probably would have, went to overtime or given them a better chance to win the game. Devontae Adams, obviously that last catch, was questionable. In my opinion, it was questionable because, they said that he bobbled and he went out of bounds, which is, it's nature of the beast. It's a tough call, right? But I think Chris Jones, ultimately, the one thing which I want to kind of reiterate was obviously the Chris Jones sack penalty. Essentially, just I mean, I think the league should really kind of reconsider and look at kind of how they're doing things, right? Because I think Chris Jones, I mean, the roughing the passer penalty, I mean, he was pretty much going and trying to break his fall with one hand, and he had the ball in his hand. Ultimately Grady Jarrett, who basically had the same kind of clean sack on Brady on Sunday. I talked about yesterday with Cortez, my co-host on the show, and I just thought, it was just a bad situation. I thought it was a bad call. And, if they would have just, let them play, then pretty much, I think it would have been a better situation, for everyone involved. I think, I think, Josh McDaniel is now 1-4. I think a lot of people are saying that, McDaniels is not necessarily a good coach for whatever reason. I think, I mean, for me personally, I don't really have an opinion because I don't know enough about Josh McDaniels and the Raiders this season, because I haven't watched enough of their games to really kind of give, an opinion about that. But I do think that there's something to be said about, starting off, 1-3 and having a 17-point lead twice and losing both those games, right? So, I mean, it's tough either way, but I think, one of the things that, Bjorn McDaniels, needs to focus on, moving into, coming into this next week and for the rest of the season is, those situational play calls, right? Those have killed Nathaniel Hackett, those have obviously, killed Josh McDaniels as well. So I mean, I think, if Josh McDaniels was just if he was, a little more cognizant of, just situational play calling, then I think it would have been a better I mean, I just think that they if they took the points, instead of trying to go for it, obviously I think Joe Buck and Troy Aikman said last night, the analytics state that you want to go for it because statistically you have a higher probability of getting the 2 point conversion as opposed to just selling for the points, right? But I think I mean, coaches need to make that judgment call. Analytics can say one thing, but situation is that it's the fourth quarter at Kansas City, and you want to give it. You obviously still have to stop Patrick Mahomes that offense, who was basically clicking all night after that. After the first kind of first quarter and the first half of the second quarter. I think that the Raiders could have definitely they could have made something out of that. I also think the Raiders, when they, I mean, because again, people will say, well, the Chiefs also failed the 2 point conversion, prior to that when they scored. And another thing I want to know is special teams, right? I mean, 51 on the Raiders basically, he penalized. He there was a block, I believe, and I'm not sure how egregious it was because the film didn't really show too much, but I think 51 on the Raiders who had that block, he basically gave the Chiefs a first down as opposed to a 3 point a 3 point advantage, a 3 point lead advantage. And I think the Raiders that would have put the Raiders in a much better position because if they had scored after that, the way they did with Devontae, I mean, then definitely, they would have won. Oh, sorry, I forgot. So yeah, for this league, now found it. I had two players who had zero. I had T. Higgins and I had Darren Waller, right, who went out, the second quarter. Um, so it's surprising. That's why I was able to. It's surprising for me I won that. And in this league right here, I want to talk about, obviously George Kittle and Travis Kelce. Travis Kelce is a year older than me, folks. 33. He had his 33rd birthday yesterday. George Kittle has 29th birthday on Sunday. It's kind of interesting how they're only one day apart in their birthdays, two of the premier tight ends in the NFL. Obviously Mark Andrews probably has something to say about that now, right? But anyways, Kittle was, he got in the rhythm. He had 47 catches, but he didn't have any touchdowns. So obviously, the points, I mean, I would say it's a pretty solid showing. I mean, I still had more PPR than I did in my ESPN Plus league, but obviously, the opponent I had Lamar Jackson, Austin Eckler, uh, Leonard Fournette, Eckler and Leonard Fournette combined, for 80 points on the day, so 40 points each. Patrick Mahomes had around 30, 31, 32 points, on the day. Lamar Jackson, on Sunday night, he had a pedestrian game. He made enough plays to win the game, but fantasy wise, he was kind of just, it was kind of flat, right? Jalen Hurts as well. Jalen Hurts had a tough game against the Arizona Cardinals on Sunday, and he was kind of flat too. But I mean, I'm thinking like moving forward, obviously, like I'm gonna have to probably make some changes in my lineup because Kittle has not been. I mean, he got some kind of traction going, but I mean, so far, I mean, he's been maybe around 7 points. It's like his best game on the season. Um, I mean, granted that he's been leveraged so much in the blocking game. I think it's interesting to know kind of the parallels between him and Kelce. How Kelce, and it's interesting to me. Obviously, like seeing Kelce at the age of 33, still kind of go at a high level, and that's what Lisa Salter asked him last night. About kind of how are you going at such a high level? He said, just keep fighting and play for these fans and play for the city, Kansas City, and that's pretty much it. But I think ultimately, Kittle as well, Kittle has the ability to kind of also be leveraged in that capacity. But, we've with all the offensive line kind of, turn around and shifts that, that I mentioned, obviously when Randy Cross is on here on Friday, I think the Niners are going to have to kind of figure something out. You know what I mean? Well, they've already figured out kind of how to use him, and he's been phenomenal in the blocking game, right? And then he leaks out when needed. He got a few kind of clutch first downs, for us to open up the offensive drive of the Carolina Panthers game. But I think we're going to have to see a little bit more, for him production wise, because coming up, in 2 weeks we play this Chiefs team. And it's going to be interesting, because they're coming in with momentum, and I think that it's going to be one of those things that we know where I mean they could potentially be. I mean, right now they're 4-1. They may be 5-1. They may be 4-2. We may win this weekend against Atlanta, then we'll be 4-2. So maybe it's a 5-1 versus 4-2 team, right? And it's going to be a pretty high, pretty high stake matchup, right? So I mean, I think that I'm really that game is going to be for us. I'm not saying it's a must win, but I think we're gonna have to win that game with Kansas City. If we want to be taken seriously. Obviously, a few of my friends, watching this, shout out, Michael Paris, right, on Twitter. He basically telling me, hey, bro, why are you cheering for the Raiders? The Faders. He calls them the Faders. He said, why are you cheering for the Faders, man? They got the help from the refs, And I'm like, well, it's not so much about the refs. I mean, I'm looking at it from the perspective of, the underdog team, and always cheering for the underdog. That's kind of, my mantra. I like the underdogs winning. Some more fantasy kind of, I think I'm gonna probably have to make some changes in my lineup, right? Obviously, T. Higgins, has been kind of, he's been out. And I think, this week and last week was okay. Waller, I mean, he's been kind of a letdown this season. I think he might be out based on the injury. Kittle's been okay. I mean, I've had some guys who have left on my bench, like Marvin Jones Jr. He had a solid game, or he Moser had a solid game. I think he had around 21 points, because he had 110 yards rushing and a touchdown or 113 yards. I'm not sure the exact number. And then essentially, I'm gonna have to probably also look into, my quarterbacks are, pretty solid, I would say. I think, but the problem is, looking forward, I think Jalen Hurts playing the Dallas Cowboys, I may bench him because, from a fantasy perspective, I mean, I'm not sure if it's a really favorable matchup based on how Dallas's defense has been playing this season, right? So, I mean, I may make some changes there. I may also, make some changes with, from this league, right? Lamar, I mean, depends on who he's playing next week. He's playing like MVP right now, so is Jalen, but some of these tough games, right? I mean, it's always these tough divisional games, that, like Lamar had, on Sunday night. Jalen's going to have coming up this week, and, I'm picking the Eagles to win that game, but I think it's going to be interesting, because, if Jalen can actually have like, a pretty solid showing, like a good, like kind of game like he had on Monday night against Minnesota, that's going to be another statement win, for Philadelphia. And I mean, then they've had multiple statement wins so far, even though we're only 5 games into the season. But, I think it's something to kind of, I'm going to have to mull over that. But yeah, I mean, and obviously Devontae Adams showing the reporter, that's just Bush League. I mean, I know he apologized for it, but he's probably gonna have to cut a check for the guy. But I mean, there's no place for that, right? Obviously, the league or after the game, even if you win or lose, it doesn't matter. I mean, you can't put your hands on someone else who's just who's just a crew member, right? Trying to basically, do his job, right? But ultimately now, I'm 3-2, one game win streak in this league and a 2 game lose streak, 3-2. So we'll see how it shapes out next week. But if I'm losing again, I probably won't do another episode, right? Because won't be much to talk about. But I'm hoping that maybe I can keep this I can get some momentum going if I can get some wins coming up this week and get some momentum going. So now is obviously on 2 game win streak. They're going to continue that obviously like I said yesterday against Atlanta. And I guess I'm gonna be looking forward to seeing who else is available in the market. I'm gonna probably make some changes at running back because Kareem Hunt, Travis Etienne Jr. have been kind of disappointing. Jacobs has been great, so I mean, I'll probably keep him there, but I'm gonna have to see, who else is available in the market. Rashad Penny's out, and that kind of sucks because like, I missed, kind of the cash in on that, last week. So, we'll see how it goes. But obviously Detroit's offense looks great, so maybe I'll pick up Goff. I don't know. But anyways, that's my quick and dirty kind of fantasy recap, Monday Night Football recap in 15 minutes. Thank you all for tuning into this episode. Have a great Tuesday, everybody. Stay safe. God bless, and I will see you guys next week.